So it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Johnson. I've worked with Kevin the past few years with my work in the Archdiocese, and you are in for a treat. He's a wonderful speaker, he's a teacher, he's a writer, he's a blogger. Kevin runs a nonprofit called The Inner Room that focuses on silent prayer and Catholic social teaching. He's the co-host of a popular podcast called Encountering Silence, and his writing appears on online blogs, Daily Theology and Patheos, as well as his own website called The End of Words. Kevin is adjunct professor at Sacred Heart University and has a master's in theology from Yale Divinity School, currently working on his doctorate at Boston College. Kevin lives on the shoreline with his wife and 3 kids. As much as Kevin loves silence, I can tell you that this workshop is not at all silent. He has a lot to say with us, so welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. So, thank you so much for inviting me to come here, and I'm excited to be here. And as Lynn points out, it's kind of funny. My research and area of interest is silence and about how it's important for us as people, etc. And that's really kind of funny because I speak about silence in my book. So I spend a lot of time talking and explaining to people about that. The topic, that will come into play a little bit today, but mostly the topic why I'm here. I was invited by Eileen and the rest of the people at the church here to talk about the topic. They asked me, they said, could you come and talk to us about why, hold on, Mary? Yeah. The topic, as it was given to me, is a vibrant faith in today's world. So how can we live a living, vibrant means living faith in today's world. So I took that and I said, okay, this is very interesting, this is very important, and I believe this is an important topic. So as I sat down and thought about this, I said, okay, so the title of this talk, right? And the title of this talk is A Vibrant Faith in Today's World, and the subtitle is Our Impossible Task. In other words, it can't be done. I know that seems like this is a strange space to say that it can't be done. Now, why would I say that? Part of me, I think it's a little provocative. Maybe I spend a lot of time on the internet and I'm into clickbaity titles. Top 10 reasons why Christianity is impossible. You won't believe number 6. Click on it. And so maybe I'm trying to get you to hold your attention here to see what I'm talking about. But honestly, I do believe this, and you will see why in a minute. So the very first thing is this. Why do I say it's impossible? Why is Christianity our impossible task? Well, a lot of reasons. The first one is, and again, I'm a philosophy professor and a theology professor. And if this was a class, we could sit down and get into some really deep, heavy stuff, and it would be a lot of fun for me. But today, I can see the look on your face. That wouldn't be a lot of fun for you. We're not going to do that. However, I do want to be seriously and true to that, and I want to point out something. So the Catholic philosopher Charles Taylor, he wrote a short book. It's about 1,100 pages long. A short book called A Secular Age. And he points out that we live now in a secular age. And what he means by that, and I want to latch on, why this is important. A secular age is just simply this. We now live, about 500-600 years ago, there was a shift. Our culture went in a very different direction. And there was a shift where you can now live in life and work, and your science and your business and your politics and all your basic kind of everyday living can talk about the world in a way and never have to mention the word God. Our science, for instance, can really, the way it thinks about reality, God does not come into the picture. It's not part of any of the experiments we do. You can't measure it. It's not in your math, etc. And now, this is not an anti-science kind of diatribe on my part. I'm not going to do that. In fact, I very much believe in science. But it's a very interesting thing because we've moved in this direction. And so because of that, because Charles Taylor points this out, because of that, we have a very different relationship with words and ideas than we did 500-600 years ago. And you say to me, who cares? Well, here's the catch. When you come to a place like this and you hear words like God, prayer, soul, or even things like human being, and it's there in our catechism, it's there in our prayers, you have to remember the church is old. A lot of this stuff, a lot of our wisdom comes, Christ is 2,000 years ago. And I just told you that the definitions changed 600 years ago. So can you see now, we hear the word human being, we hear the word God, we're interpreting with the year 2018 what that means to us. But that's not what the church is pointing at. All right? And so we have a language problem, first off. Second off, we have a thinking problem. What do I mean? Well, again, 600 years ago, we approached reality very differently than we do now. And again, we don't think about this. No one in this room realizes this because we've only lived now, and our grandparents have only lived now, and our great-grandparents. This has been going on for 600 years. We're unaware of this. But the reason why I'm interested in silence, for instance, is that for us, we don't understand that silence actually is a way of knowing the world. And we do not live in a silent world anymore. If you think about it, listen. Even in here, we have the sound of fans, there's the sound of the lights, there's the sound of heat in your house. Your refrigerator clicks on in the middle of the night, the heater clicks on. You go outside for a walk, airplanes fly over, traffic is constantly humming, the wires are constantly humming. And again, people say to me, so what? Well, actually, it's a big deal because the human mind, the way it's evolved, is sound is a warning system. Back in ye olden days when we lived in caves, you would go to sleep, and all of a sudden, if there was a noise, you'd wake right up because it could be a bear coming to eat you. So there's a part of your mind that's constantly scanning for noise. Constantly. But we live and we've been trained in our culture that there's certain noises that aren't, quote, dangerous. So we hear that, and you just told yourself, ignore it. Or traffic, ignore it, etc., etc. But the thing is that when you actually ignore it, there's a part of your mind say, ignore it, and there's a part of your mind saying, don't ignore it, it could be dangerous. And what happens is noise makes us self-conscious. You're aware, when it's quiet, you forget about yourself. If you're safe and quiet, you can disappear for a little bit. But noise makes you trapped here. It makes the world about you. And see, this is the change that happened 600 years ago, is everything in our culture, everything secular, is about human beings being at the center. And that's a different change. That's a very different change toward the world. Because if we're honest about ourselves, if we really pay attention, we are not, sadly, the center of the universe. Now, we like to think so, and culture teaches us this. Everything about our culture reinforces we are the center of the universe. We learn all the time. It's subtle. Your phones make you give the world to you the way you want it, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but you don't have to have TV commercials or commercials anymore. You stream something on Spotify or Netflix or whatever, you can get rid of that. You can make life the way you would like it. And if you get commercials there, it's specifically for you. I do not get commercials on my phone that would speak to a 75-year-old Asian woman. I get commercials for me because the computers have learned really well how to send me commercials that would make me more likely to buy something. So the whole universe gets shaped to fit for us, right? That is unique. That is very different. Old times, way back, we realized that the world was not about us. That there was a lot more porous and it was open. Things flowed in and out. And silence allows for this, right? And so now if we're constantly surrounded by noise, there is no place for your mind to kind of just release into kind of the open space, right? So that's the reason why I talk about silence all the time. It's also, we find it's excellent for you physically, mentally, psychologically, study after study after study. And I always make this comment. You'll see it's really popular now. It's a big thing that you hear about this idea of, quote, mindfulness, being stress reduction and all sorts of stuff. And that's true. It's really good for us. And there's this thing. But I always point out that we Catholics we've been doing mindfulness forever. We just don't talk about it. The word we use is vigilance. But there is a kind of a silent Catholic mindfulness that doesn't really get talked about too much. So we recognize that and know that. So what I'd like to say then is, what happens is, because of the way our culture is now, when we talk about Christianity, we talk about it as a list of things to do. So when I was asked to give this talk, they said, could you address, like, here's some of the things you possibly could talk about. You could say about how our faith leads us to be moral, to do things in the world like, help the poor, or, build houses for the homeless or something. I was like, okay, yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's right. I could do that. They said, could you talk about how we could fit in Christianity in our busy lives? Right? And that's true too. We're very busy people. I mean, I have 3 kids. We go to school and you go to work and you have your soccer practice and ballet practice, and you go here and you get service hours to do. Right? But look, how we can fit in Catholic activity. How can we live this faith? Look what we've done. Christianity becomes another thing to do on the to-do list. Went to church today, check. Served the poor today, check. Right? And that's the result of our culture. Our culture making it about us doing things. And that is not what Christianity teaches. See, I don't know if any of you know, I recognize that I saw in the hallway here that the church here holds on certain days of the week, they hold, they're viewing Catholicism, a series, continuing Catholic education video series they show here, I guess on Thursdays or something, it says in the hallway. And that is run by, the video program is created by Bishop Robert Barron. He was a priest for a long time, teaching, and then became a bishop a couple years ago, and he's now a bishop out in Los Angeles. And he makes this point, in one of the first books he writes. It's the opening line of the book, and I usually cite this to people, because again, I want to push this for us. Christianity is not a way, it's not a thing to do. It's not morals. It's not ethics. It's not being nice. It's not any of that. Ultimately, he said, Christianity is a way of seeing. See, that's what Christianity is. That's a very different shift, and we'll talk about what that means here. Christianity is a way of seeing. So, the church has said oftentimes, Christianity, the Catholic Church tells us that the whole focus of Christianity is the vision of God. That ultimately it's about the vision of God. So what does that mean, and what are we talking about? So, I would like to walk us through. I know that we have some of the young adults here, and so I've taught at high school and college level. I'd like to speak to them. I'll talk to you adults as well, but I'm going to assume what I hope will be review for you. But if it's not review, if this is brand new, that would be fine. But I want us to walk us through and see if this is a little different than the way you've thought about Christianity in the past. So the very first thing I'd like to point out to people is this: the vision of God. Well, what do I mean by the word God? Right, let's get really basic. What do I mean by the word God? Now, in our time, in our culture, because of the way we think, and as I said, the culture has changed, definitions have changed. When I say the word God, most of the time people have 2 thoughts in their head. And you don't have to confess, this is not confession if you fall into these categories, but a lot of people have two thoughts in their head. If I say the word God, well, oftentimes the first thing people think of is Santa Claus. And what I mean by that is he's an old man in the sky, he's invisible, he knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he's got a list, he knows if you're naughty or nice. If you're nice, you get your things. If you're bad, you get coal in your, well, you get worse than coal in your stocking. And so there you go. And so people, they do that because of pictures of God as an old man, etc., and they kind of have this natural predisposition. And we say things like God is a supreme being, and so then people think of God that way. Another way is, if you don't think Santa Claus, a lot of times what people think in their head, okay, God, and this is, again, because of the movies, you might think of something like the Avengers, Superman, Thor, etc. God is a superhero. He's like a human being, but he's got these magic powers. He's really strong, he's powerful, he can walk on water, he can do stuff, right? And I want to point out that that is not what the church teaches. The Catholic Church does not teach that God is either of those, because God is not a thing. God is not a thing, a being, a noun in that way. That is a false image of God. What the Catholic Church teaches is that God is beyond all knowing. God is not a noun. God can't be captured that way. See, if it's a noun, if it's a thing, it's created, it's limited, it's finite. And the church is telling you that God is infinite. God is beyond things. God is creator, not created. See, and this is what's hard. This is why I told you, if you were in my class, if you're doing philosophy, this is where your head starts to hurt. Because we're talking about something that cannot be described. And here's your 25-cent word. It's ineffable. God is beyond all thinking, all words, all knowing. Now, if you need, we have to talk about God. God's important because it's real. So the church says God is real, but the issue is your mind can't grasp what it is. So if you need an image, if you need something, and I think we all do, if we want to use a word, I said oftentimes, I like the word, if you think of God as a thing, well, how about this? X in an algebra statement. God is like X in an algebra statement. You're not sure what X is, but you're solving for it. You know it's there, and you're trying to figure it out. So it's a placeholder in the formula to try to make sense of what you're talking about. You're pointing to something real, but it's beyond what you can know. If that doesn't work, if you don't like that one, I often say to somebody, God is like a horizon. So if I brought you to the shore, I could say, hey, where's the horizon? And you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you point. So then I used to say to my students, I'd say, okay, you know where the horizon is? Yep. I was like, it's real? Yep. All right, let's get in the water, and let's go swimming toward it until we get there. And my students are smart enough to go, yeah, no thanks. Never mind, what's the matter? I'll never get there. Why not? Because it's a horizon. Yeah. Can't hold a horizon, can't put it in your pocket, can't touch it. And then I ask my students, is it real? Obviously it is, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's not a thing that you can hold on to, right? You can't grasp it, you can't manipulate it. So if God is not that way, maybe another way, a better way, the church says if you want to know what God is, if we need to understand the best answer, it's still not right. Like the church says, it's the least wrong way, right? So the least wrong way to talk about God is to say that God is not really a noun. It'd be better to say that God is a verb. I know that's weird, but it's closer. And the church says there's a specific verb, actually, one that we rely on, that we could say that God is. And if you're looking for it, you can find it in the Bible, 1 John 4, chapter 8 chapter 4, verse 8. There's one word. Can anyone give it? It's a verb, 4 letters. God is, I thought I heard it. Love. God is love. See, because love is not like one of those things you can't like, oh look, here's some love. You put it in your pocket. Love is one of those things, it's an action, it's an activity, it's engaged in people, it's in relationships, it's in interactions. See, the church is saying God is something closer to that if your mind is trying to figure out what to talk about here. Now, again, language is at our problem. The Bible was written in ancient Greek. Now, we are English, we've translated it. You hear the word love, and I said love gets abused all the time. We throw the word love around, and I tell my students, I say all the time, I go, listen, I love my dog, I love donuts, and I love my wife. And I better mean 3 different things there, or that's weird. Right? So we just throw the word love around like it's no big deal. But see, in Greek, there were other words. There are 3 words, actually, for love. One, eros. That's where we get the word erotic love. That is love because it gives me pleasure. I love X because X gives me pleasure. So we think of, sexuality, we think of beauty, we think of those kinds of things. That's erotic love, right? And I say to people, if you want to see erotic love, follow me to the bakery where I eat donuts. And you will see the most erotic thing that you've ever seen because I absolutely get tremendous pleasure from the donuts, right? So but guess what? That's not the Greek word for God. There's another Greek word. All you Philadelphia Eagles fans. Philia. Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Philia is friendship. It's brotherly love. It's brothers and sisters, it's interaction, it's friendship. And again, I love X because X is my friend. And again, eros and philia, wonderful. I'm not condemning them. Spectacular. They make life worth living. They're wonderful. Church has no problem with it. I have no problem with it. But here's the catch. Both of those loves put me at the center of the universe. I love X because it gives me pleasure. I love X because these are my friends, my peeps, my boys, my bros. However else you want to talk, whatever hip way to talk about it. Notice, it's me being the center of the universe. The Greek word that is used in the Bible to talk about God is agape, or sometimes agape. It's a unique word. It wasn't thrown around all the time. He didn't use it all the time. It was there, but it was kind of strange. They understood it, but not all the time. What is agape? Watch it. Here's the definition for agape. I love X because it's good for X. Now you go, wait, what? So let me give you a tangible kind of, you can grasp it, what I mean. When I first got married, when my wife and I first got married, we decided to start having kids. My wife became pregnant and she came up to me and she says, listen, I'm pregnant, hey, this is great. And then she's like, we're going to have a daughter. Okay, that's great. And then she says, I've been thinking about it and I've been doing a lot of research and I looked into it. It makes a lot of sense. I think we should breastfeed the baby. And I go, as a guy, I'm like, sure. I don't know what that means, but sure. And she says, okay, just to let you know though, a couple things. When you breastfeed a baby, first off, it takes a lot of energy to do that. I'm going to be tired all the time. So if you could help carry stuff and let me rest, I'm like, sure, yeah, got that. We're good. She's like, another thing. She says, when you breastfeed children, my understanding from the research and from what I'm reading and talking to the nurses and the doctors, the baby eats a lot. They don't get filled as often. If you gave them formula or cereal or something, they get a full stomach and they don't eat as often. But with breast milk, they eat a lot. And their body digests it really fast and uses it. And because of that, they go to the bathroom a lot. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be exhausted. When the baby wakes up in the middle of the night, could you go get the baby, go get her, pick her up, change her, bring her to me, I'll feed her, and then when you're done, put her back in the crib, and then, I said, sure, that's great, that's lovely. And it was, for about 3 weeks. 3 or 4 weeks in, here was the problem. It's different for all children, but my daughter, she was special. She would eat, and she would give us somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes before she would wake up and need to eat again. So about 3.5 weeks in, with hardly any sleep, and trying to go to work and do all the stuff that adults have to keep doing, I was not in a very good place. Now, why did my wife and I do this? I'll tell you first off, I got no pleasure out of getting up every hour or so. So it was not erotic on any level. And she was definitely not my friend at 2:15 in the morning. In fact, no one is my friend at 2:15 in the morning, sorry. And I say to people all the time, my wife goes, I can't believe it. I said, I swear to you, I must have been exhausted. I remember picking her up out of the crib, and I held her, and she's crying, like, and I'm looking at her, I'm like, why do you hate Daddy so much? Why do you hate him? So why did we do it? Because it was good for the baby. It had nothing to do with me. It was good for the baby. And that is agape. Self-sacrificing, self-forgetting, self-giving. I gave up my time, my energy. I got nothing out of that. It helped the baby. My wife gave up her body. All you mothers understand this. You sacrifice your body, you sacrifice your time, you sacrifice your energy for the baby. And that is what the church says is closest to what we mean by the word God. That kind of energy, that kind of love, that kind of relationship bonding, where it's how can I serve? How can I serve? And so what the church is saying is that the universe came into being, the Big Bang, right? By the way, all you high school people, Big Bang Theory, developed Roman Catholic priest. Came up with that as a scientist. So don't ever tell me that science and religion don't go together. We're pretty big into science. So the Big Bang Theory, boom, the explosion of that hydrogen atom and everything. It's God's self-giving love of reaching out. In other words, if we, this is wrong, but if I had to use this language, the DNA of God, the very substance of God is an outward, how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I help you be you? How can I make you fully be you? And that's agape love. Now that's important to know, because second point, human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. Imago Dei. In other words, you are self-giving love. That's what you are. That's what you're called to be. Right? And so the focus then, God is ultimate mystery. This is what the church is saying. God is mystery. And what we mean by that is you can't think God, you can't know God in that way. You can't make a scientific formula. You can't know God with your photograph. You can't measure God that way. It's mystery. Because God is self-giving love, reaching out, serving. And if God is ultimate mystery and is this self-giving love, guess what you are? Mystery. And so I say to my students all the time, I go, okay, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I'll say to somebody, I'll be like, who are you? Right? I'll say, just, who are you? And somebody will be like, John. And I'll be like, okay, great, John, if you change your name, do you stop being you? If you decide John stinks, and today from now on, we're going to call you Steve, and you file paperwork in court, and now your name's officially Steve, do you stop being you? No. Okay, so you're not your name. Where do you live? Farmington. If you move to Hartford, are you still you? Yep. You're not your name, you're not your address. You see where I go, right? You're not your name, you're not your address, you're not your job, you're not your ideas, you're not your beliefs. All these things constantly change. Who are you? You are mystery. And then I say to my students, do you know why? Do you know why you don't know who you are? And there's always this student in class who's trying to get the A. You see the smoke coming out of their ears, and they're like, I can get this one. They're thinking so hard, it hurts, you know? And I go, do you know why? Because you're looking for a definition. And the problem is this. You're not done yet. You're becoming you. We don't know who you are yet. You still have yet to come. You're here, but you're still yet to come. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 1 day, or you could be 150. You are still yet to come. You are a mystery. But what the church is telling you is that you are fully you when you give yourself away. When you can learn how to open up, and it's not about me, but how can I love? See, because what God is offering for us, what God is focusing on, is how can I love you into existence? What's the best for you? And our attitude should be the same way. When we do that, we're mirroring God, and then we actually become who we are meant to be. And when we become who we're meant to be, it's interesting, even though we're all agapic love, the way she does it, she does it, she does it, he does it, I do it, is uniquely our own. Self-giving love through this is different than self-giving love through this or this. Because different DNA, different family background, different ideas. What does it look like to offer love to the world? Well, look, only you can uniquely offer it. You are not redundant. You are essential. No one can love the world the way you love it. Hence why God makes you. See? Now that's all lovely. And I made us all feel nice and warm inside like a Hallmark card. But now I have to drop the hammer. And you probably are smart enough, you probably already thought this in the back of your head. You're going, this sounds really nice. But I woke up this morning, and it's all great that everybody's self-giving love. But I woke up this morning and I read the news. I haven't seen a lot of self-giving love. And as I was saying, I do a lot of commuting. And on the highway, I don't see a lot of self-giving love. I see a lot of cutting each other off and giving the finger and all sorts of non-loving things. No one's there. How can I serve you? It seems to be everybody's like, let me cut you off. So, why is that? Well, we have to talk about full reality, and full reality is this: sin. Now, I know I'm the downer, because I always say the word sin, but here again, I want to point out, we have a language problem. Because the word sin in our modern culture, the way it's developed over the last 500 or 600 years, actually in response to the Protestant Reformation and everything else, but the idea of sin really focuses on and has pushed us in the direction of kind of feeling bad. Like sin is supposed to mean like, I'm gross. If somebody says to you, you're a sinner, you're supposed to be like, there's a part of me that's just gross. You need to cut it out with a knife or something. Or we feel shame or guilt or upset. And see, sin doesn't really mean that, actually. And it's easy, we want to go there because there's a part of us, we all know. If we're quiet, but no one will ever say it in public. But when we're alone with our thoughts, we know. We say, if we're vulnerable, And no one ever has to admit it, but they could say to themselves, I know there's a part of me that I would never show the world. There's parts of me that I don't want anyone to even know exists. And we're embarrassed about it and upset about it and wish it wasn't there. And so we're easy to latch on to the sin is broken and sin is disgusting and we're gross. We feel like there's something wrong. But that's not what the word sin means. The Hebrew word in the Old Testament, where we get the word sin, the Hebrew word means something closer to missing the mark. You were shooting for a target and your aim is off. It's not about a brokenness inside that's like irredeemable. It's about having the wrong vision again. It's about having the wrong vision. It's about aiming at the wrong thing. And the catch is that for us, most people think of God as all-powerful, all-knowing, and it's about God controlling and manipulating the world. And so we want to be like God. We want to be, that was actually the sin in the Garden of Eden, if you notice that. The serpent says to Eve and Adam, if you eat of this fruit, you can be like God. And they're all like, that's great. Give me some of that food. I'll eat that. What's really funny is if you pay attention, if you read a few verses before that, it made clear that Adam and Eve were made in the image and likeness of God. They already were like God. The sin in the garden is a lie. Be like God. You're already like God. Image and likeness of God. But see, it's aiming in the wrong direction. It's trying to control what you think God is, what you think you should be. It's about you being the center of the universe. So the church, that's what we mean by original sin. We turn in on ourselves, we make it all about us. And when you do that, you're off the mark. You're not actually who you're meant to be. You're meant to reach out. And so that's why the church says, if you think about it, everything is about relationships. Even God is Trinitarian. Why? God is beyond all things, but we say, if you're going to talk about God, God has a relationship of Father, Son, and Spirit. Father gives to Son, Son gives to Father. It's this flowing love. And we're made to be in relationships. That's why you have this natural desire to want friends, to get married, to have children. There's this, I need to reach out, I need to reach out, I need to reach out. Right? And so that's really what the whole focus is. So then, how can I have a vibrant faith in today's world if the whole world is teaching me it's about me? Well, we need to have a vision of God. How can we have a vision? I'm going to help you with that a little bit. So right now I'd like us to do a really brief little exercise. If you humor me. If all of you for a second, if you could close your eyes. I don't want you to make anything up. I want you to pull something out of your memory. So don't fake this. It has to be about your life. And no one else is going to know anyway, so it doesn't matter. Keep it in your head. I want you to think back when you were a kid. Try to go back in your memory. And I want you to remember somebody, doesn't matter who, teacher, friend, aunt, uncle, whatever, doesn't matter. I want you to imagine somebody in your life when you were younger, as young as you can remember. When that person showed up and came to your house, you were so happy. Just seeing them made you smile. I want you to try to recall somebody in your life that when you saw them when you were a young kid, being in their presence just made you happy. If you don't have a person, it could be a pet. That's fine. Now I want you to see, and use your imagination, I want you to see that person standing in front of you right now with your eyes closed. That person's here, and I want you to see them smiling at you. Look them in the eye. What does that feel like to be next to that person? Just feel it for a second. And I want you to hear them say this to you. I just love being with you. You are so important to me. Do you know how special you are? You deserve everything that life can give you. Look them in the eye and see them smiling at you, and smile back. And if your mind starts to wander, just look them in the eye and feel what it feels like to be loved. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Okay. So that is a visualization exercise that I'm taking from St. Ignatius of Loyola, Jesuits. They use their imagination to pray. But you notice what I did here. I didn't ask you to make anything up. I didn't ask you to pretend. I want you to actually remember an actual feeling. And the reason I did that for you was this. I asked you to do something when you were younger. Why? Well, I could have said, remember your parents or something. And I teach kind of young people, and I think it's for all of us, I think. We all love our parents, but I'm a parent. And relationships with our kids, it's complicated, right? We love our parents, and sometimes we don't love our parents. And so it's complicated. And so I didn't want a complicated thing, right? I just wanted it. The reason you do something when you were younger is when you're a kid, adults, when you were a kid and you picked up that somebody really liked you, and you felt good and comfortable around them, adults like kids. I don't get anything from a 2-year-old. That 2-year-old is not going to give me $50. 2-year-old can't get me a job. It's not going to get good on my resume. The only reason I like being around the 2-year-old is because I like the 2-year-old. It's purely just who they are. And kids pick that up. We all know what that feels like. And so that's kind of a pure, somebody offering their attention, giving to the kid attention. That's agapic love right there. Even if it's just brief, hey, I want to do card games with you, or juggle, or make you laugh, pretend to steal your nose, like my uncle used to do, something like that. Just want to be there and with you, and I want us to sit, because this is how you can, quote, have a vision of God. You're starting to rest in agapic love. And you can do this. This is prayer. You do not, notice it's a silent prayer. You don't have to say words. You don't have to have any ideas. You're just resting in the love. Because Jesus says, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am. So wherever there's kind of this agapic love going on, God is present. In fact, since God is kind of a verb, I even do this because it's fun. You can, if you feel this self-giving love going on, what you're doing is you're godding. Have you godded today? It's weird when you make it a past tense verb. But this idea of godding, right? And it gets us in that place. So to have this vision of God, to sit in this, you can also do petition this way. So I tell people, I had a friend who was dying in hospice and had tremendous pain. What I would imagine is, that's the first stage, is you can imagine somebody loving, but you can also imagine them entering your heart. And with the heartbeat, you feel in their love. I also teach that love that you feel, that's the love that Mary and the saints and Jesus all have. So that's what we mean. You can imagine that's how Christ loves you. That feeling is the same feeling. So you can imagine they're here sending you that love. A friend who was ill, and I was sitting in the room, and she was in a lot of pain. You could see her heart rate monitor lipping. She was in a lot of pain, and I would just send love. Because what you can do is you can imagine like rays of light sending this agapic love to them. And I'd watch her heart rate start to calm. And people ask me how that is, and I'll say, well, I just think because it's like a hug, people know when there's love in the room. You know when somebody's fake and when somebody's not. And she's laying in bed, she picked up that she was receiving that warm embrace, and she felt safe. So this idea of healing in that way. So you don't even have, you can petition, you can imagine people who need love and you can send that love to people. So I have paperwork that you can take that prayer home with you if you'd like to use that. So now you see, we don't have much time, and this was a huge topic, and I only have a couple more minutes here. How to live a vibrant faith is not about how can we do one more thing. It's how can we rest in this vision of God? How can we make it so we're no longer, we're the center of the universe, but that God is, and that we want to participate and swim in that stream. See, it's a very different attack. It's no longer a to-do list. It's how do I see the world in such a radically different way? And what are the things that we can do? Well, it's very basic things that the church tells us to do. First off, prayer. That prayer of teaching us to rest in God's love, to be quiet, to be self-forgetful. See, that's the catch, is that helps us focus and get us to the place. But could you get to the place, a really good prayer is, once you get to the place of that love, and it's in the thing that I will pass out to you, once you can get to that place of love, can you then just rest there and drop away? Not make it about you, but just rest in that love. Because God will do what God needs to do. And it won't be about you trying to control it, it'll be about God will allow it. And what happens is that we can trust that because God wants the best for you. There's no erasing of you. You will become fully you if you rest in that and learn to come from that space. So, that vision of God. And then you can see, this is why the church says social justice, incorporeal works of mercy, etc. Why it's important. Because it's not something else to do. It's not like, okay, can I go help homeless people because that's what we're supposed to do to be good. No, it's a very different vision. I'm self-giving love. I just naturally need to help. This is what I do. This is a different vision. It's not, how do I fit it into my life? Like I'm doing a busy life and I add it on. That makes me the center of the universe, and then I have to do another thing. It's not about that at all. This is about how do I live my life in such a way that I can be of service. And so justice is nothing more than love, what love looks like in public. This is what it looks like to serve and to offer. How can I be of service? How can I help you become fully who you are? At your root. Not your self-centered root, not you being in charge. Like, I'm not here to support you becoming the most ego-centered thing. I'm here to offer, how can I help you so that you can learn to give yourself away? How can I teach you and reach you so that you become fully who you are, agape love? Right? And this is very important because we live in a world now where everything is so interconnected. We do injustice all the time, whether we know it or not, sadly. Like, I used to teach men who were becoming deacons in the church, and I taught a class called The Fullness of Faith, and we would talk about prayer and sacraments and then social justice work, and I would point out, I was like, so for instance, no one in this room, I would imagine, no one in this room is a big fan of child slavery. I don't think, there's always somebody who's got to be a smart aleck. So it's like, oh, actually, I'm a fan. Sign me up for that. No one in this room would be a fan of that. And yet, we all have computers and cell phones. And if you pay attention, no one pays attention because we're busy. Most of us don't know this, but if you pay attention, how do you make one of these things? Well, you need silicon chips and stuff to make computers, right? And how do you do that? Well, you need silicon, you need certain things and other things to help make those computer pieces. You need minerals. And some of the minerals we need, most of them actually, come out of mines in Africa. And how do those mines work? Well, the mines work is that they have basically 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids going into mines and pulling out rocks. And the mines collapse. They're not getting paid. barely paid at all, the mines collapse and the kids perish. Now, we all buy our phones, and we're supporting the companies that do that. And there's actually nothing that Samsung or iPhone can do because there's only a handful of companies in the world that do this mining. So you can see what happens is society is interested in technology, etc. I don't think anyone wants to stand up and say, hey, let's go do this horrible thing. But we've created systems in place where profit and money, etc. dominate that self-given love. And so we have that issue. So the problem becomes then, if we could be self-giving love, we could transform this. And so I'll end here on this comment, now that the kids are back. How can we live a vibrant faith? And I told you, it's our impossible task. It's impossible because we cannot do it. It is not about us doing anything. It's about a vision of God. But you notice what I said? It's a vision of God. And you all probably interpreted that as I need to have a vision of God. And that's not what I'm saying. God needs to have a vision through you. God is in charge. It's grace. And all we can do is cooperate with that. We have to surrender to the vision. And we do that by training ourselves to have that vision. The sacraments, the prayer, the activities that we do of service teach us that we are the center of the universe. God is. And that it's love is the whole reason for that. Thank you.